Okay, welcome everybody, and another Shaar. It's amazing to sit in this room and to remember that we started this room when it was actually still cold, and now um, we're going to find a way to breathe. I'm not worried about that, but quite different. That just shows that we've been in some journey already. I actually think maybe even 3 months. Not sure. Um, okay, so we are in the middle of Perek Gimel, discussing the 5 steps for a person to have a proper connection of bitachon. So the first one we finished, we went through it properly, is the 7 levels of, the 7 qualities one would need in order to rely on somebody and trust and feel confident with somebody. Now we're going to move on from that after we've done it properly. The akdama shenit, the second rule of preparing, the second akdama, and says like this, that a person that wants to have bitachon and a person that says he has bitachon, he has to be very honest with himself. Because if a person says he has bitachon without it really happening, then it can't work. Why? Because the whole idea and whole concept of bitachon is to believe that Hashem is monitoring everything and Hashem sees everything and Hashem knows exactly what's going on and Hashem knows what's the best for me, which means he also knows what I think and he also knows what I feel. And real bitachon is to actually trust, okay? And the definition of bitachon is that you have full trust in the person. It's hard to say the person because we're talking about Hashem, but you have full trust that this is actually going to happen. If you don't have full trust that this is actually going to happen, then it's not called bitachon. We've remembered the story, and we've said it many times, but we could always remember about this guy who was in a Shaar once, and he heard from his Rabbi that if he has full trust in Hashem and full bitachon in Hashem, no question that he will succeed and he will get what he needs. With full excitement, he went outside and he bought a lottery ticket, knowing that he's going to win 1,000,000 rubles, which will set him and his grandchildren and great-grandchildren properly. And he met the rabbi the other day, a few days before, and he tells the rabbi, I'm so happy, everything's changing. I said, what's going on? He said, well, I bought a lottery ticket, and Rabbi said that if I have full trust in Hashem, I will win. So I do. I have full trust in Hashem, and I will win. And the rabbi said, amazing. The next day, the rabbi sends somebody to him and says, the raffle is only in like 3 days. Would you sell it to me for half price? So if you're going to win 1,000,000, give it to me for 500,000. And the guy was going back and forth. Should I not? A day before, the rabbi sends him, he says, listen, I'll give you 70% if you sell it to me today. The guy said, fine. And the rabbi tells him, that's not believing, because nobody will sell any value for 70% of it one day before the time. So you can't come and say, I have full trust and full bitachon if it's not real. And by definition, the bitachon has to be real. You have to be honest with yourself to say, I actually really trust Hashem. And the way to know if you really trust Hashem is to use these measurements. So for instance, we said that how does a person know that this is not the right ishtadlus? If it's against what Hashem wants from you, then it's not the right ishtadlus. If Hashem tells you got to go daven, and you decide, no, I need to make parnasa for ishtadlus, so I can't learn, I can't daven, I can't do anything that I'm supposed to. Or I need to do something that halachically I probably wouldn't do it in with my friends. But I got to do it for parnasa reasons or whatever it is, because I work with these kind of people or whatever the concept is. If you really believe that it's only hishtadlus and you trust Hashem 100% he'll send you what you need, then it doesn't make sense for you to break a boundary. We'll even see why it's worse. Then it's even more extreme than what I'm saying. But even without going to that extreme, if somebody tells you, you got to work because that's your mission, but don't worry because I'll cover all your expenses, then you don't need to go for that extra mile. So for instance, if your boss would send you overseas and he would tell you, listen, go do a project for the company. I will pay your full expenses. You won't say, okay, the boss said I need to work 7 to 8 hours a day, but I'm worried that not all my expenses would be covered. I'm going to put in an extra hour more than what he told me. Or I'm going to do something he told me I don't need to. I'm going to go that extra mile. If you're doing it on your free time, fine. But if you're doing it on an expense of a quality that your boss told you, he's just going to get mad. And he's just going to say, but I told you I'm paying all your expenses. So why are you doing that? That means you don't trust that the boss will pay you all your expenses. So if somebody goes and he does ishtadlus more than he's supposed to, and he decides today I'm going to lower my religious standard because I need to do ishtadlus, then it's not really ishtadlus. That means I'm going to work and I need to make money because I'm concerned about my finances. Working in the time when you're supposed to work, that is your ishtadlus, not more than that. And you can't trick Hashem because we know that Hashem knows everything we think. He knows what's in our hearts, what's our feelings, what we're thinking. And there's no way we can trick Hashem and say, oh, I trust you, Hashem, don't worry, and then fill extra hours just to be sure. So that there was once a rabbi standing with his Talmidim and he gave him a whole lecture about Bitachon and trust Hashem. And suddenly a massive dog came charging towards them. And the rabbi runs away and he climbs up on the tree. Says, Talmidim tell him, Rabbi, you just gave us a whole lecture about Bitachon and a dog comes and you lose everything. So he tells them in Hebrew, I don't know how many of us understand Hebrew, but he says in Hebrew, Yesh Bitachon ve'yesh leyeter Bitachon. Though leyeter Bitachon, I'm going to be careful. But that's obviously not Bitachon because you're not trusting. You're saying, well, I'll be extra careful. Okay, you can't. It's even offensive to tell someone, I trust you 100%. Imagine you go to somebody to eat lunch and you say, oh, don't worry, I trust your cooking 100%. And you bring your own food with you. Not only that you're not trusting, it's actually quite offensive. Which, by the way, I just on a side point, I've heard from my grandfather an amazing concept. My grandfather learned in Ner Yisrael. He should be strong and healthy through all this pandemic. But he learned in Ner Yisrael, and he told me once that he was eating by Rabbi Ruderman, the Rosh Hashiva of Ner Yisrael. He was eating by him Shabbos. And Rav Ruderman had always had many, many mishlochim by him. And one mishloch from Eretz Yisrael came as soon as the meal began. He walked into the kitchen and he brings the Rebbitzin his own chicken that his wife made in Eretz Yisrael, and which was quite a standard. I heard from my grandmother, from the other side, who had a massive Echnas HaSorchim in Boston, that every week she'd have Mishlochim give her like their food from their home and say, please serve me my own food. Which is, it just shows me, eventually you realize what a tzaddik your grandmother was, because I don't know if somebody would come to my house and say, oh, just if you don't mind, serve me my own food. I don't trust your kashrus. But anyways, Rav Ruderman's having all these guests, and the Rebbitzin gets a Meshulach approaching her and says, please, if you can serve me my own food from home instead of what you made for everybody. And she looked at him and she responded, not in my kelim, I'm not, which was quite powerful. And she didn't come from an offensive point of view. She came from, I keep kashrus in my house a certain level and I don't trust anybody else as well. That's fine. But a person can't come to somebody and say, I trust your cooking and bring your own food. And the same thing, if you say, Hashem, I trust you, you'll send me everything I need, but I'm going to come with my own sandwich from home and work extra hours when you told me not to. That is not bitachon, and it's just offensive. It's just putting, it's just making the joke out of the reality, actually. Okay, so therefore, when a person realizes that Hashem knows exactly what he's thinking and Hashem could understand his actions and read his actions properly, then he won't act. He won't come and play this game. He won't come and say, yeah, I have bitachon, and it's just saying, but it's not really meaning, and it's not really being honest about it. And I got to say, that's a very hard way of living. To be honest with yourself is a very hard way of living. even if you know you'll get everything from Hashem. I mean, it's a bit off topic, but if we look in the man that the Jews had in the Midbar, which we know they had anything at all times, any taste you want, any flavor, it doesn't burn, it doesn't get too ready, not too slow. I mean, things you can imagine, you can't imagine, everything's there, all tastes in the world. And in one place in the Chumash, Chazal tell us that Hashem gave us the tamok, it's a pichit bidvash, like a real tasty thing. And in the other, and in Dvarim it says, "Vayamcho vayarivcho vayachilcho esamon." Hashem tortured us and made us fast, and He gave us the man. How does that work together? So, I think it was Reb Shonim who said, in a very interesting way, in his way, he said that man. It said that every person got according to his level. So if you were a tzaddik, it came to your house, and you just put your hand out and you picked and you ate. But if you weren't such tzaddik, then you got it in the street next to you or a bit further, and people that were really not tzaddikim found it far away. And the same thing, how it was ready. For a tzaddik, it was ready. It was ready to eat. He got it as takeaway. When a person who wasn't such a tzaddik, he had to cook it. And a person that was less, he had to grind it and make something out of it. So he says, imagine this tzaddik who messes up one night, and he wakes up in the morning, and he realizes that his man that's always by his door is actually by the other street, and he needs to actually cook it, but he doesn't have pots or anything because he never cooks it. So he goes and he says, no, so now I'm going to go to get my man with all these people. And as I walk there, I'm going to burn of embarrassment, and everybody's going to say, hey, Rabbi, what happened last night? And it's going to be quite offensive. And while I'm going to take it, even if nobody will say anything, I'll feel everybody staring. And then I'm going to have to go borrow from my neighbor a pot to cook it. And they'll say, since when do you need pots for cooking food? And I'll have to say, well, since whatever, it happened. So says, what would a guy like that come? He'll say, nah, you know what? The next day he doesn't go out to get his man. What happened? I decided to fast today. I should do a tikkun for the door. I'll do something important because he's too embarrassed to go. So he says, on the one hand, it was great food, but on the other hand, it was torture, and people would fast just so they don't have to go through that embarrassment. And in a way, Parnasla until today is a certain concept of man. Obviously, we're not measured on a daily basis, and no one else knows our relationship with Hashem and what we're doing right and wrong. But we still have this concept of Hashem knows if we really trust Him, and Hashem knows if we're really relying on Him or we're relying also on Hashem. I tried my best in the business. I didn't make enough money, so you know what, Hashem, I trust you now. Kind of, what can I do? If it doesn't help, it doesn't hurt. That's not trusting Hashem. It's got to be actively that you don't do. You're not coming to the meal with your own sandwich. That's the second point. The Akdama Shlishis. If you're going to trust Hashem, you have to trust Hashem fully, and you have to trust only Hashem. And it's quite similar to what we just spoke, but it's not about the honesty. It's a different topic. It's about trusting only Hashem. If you have a business and you assign two people to the same position, it will probably fail because nobody will take responsibility. And we know that if two people are in the same position, it just doesn't work. You need one person in charge, one person responsible. So if you trust Hashem, then you trust only Hashem. If you start trusting Hashem and yourself for your work, trusting Hashem and the fact that you have a good job, trusting Hashem and your business, then you're not trusting Him and you're only damaging. This is where it becomes even worse. Because if you trust Hashem plus something else, you're not trusting Hashem fully. Just like hiring two people for the position, telling them to do it together, then you're just going to get damage. I remember in Israel, they used to say that the beauty of teamwork is that you always have someone to blame for your faults. Now, you don't need to take responsibility. And that's exactly the thing. So if you're going to take teamwork, then nobody's responsible. So if that's how it works in this world, it also works that way with Hashem. You're saying, I don't fully trust you. I don't fully trust Hashem because I need another person. We could say what we want, but when we go to a doctor and we decide that we're going to get a second opinion, many times we'll try to keep it a bit quiet from the doctor that we're going for another opinion. And even if we do, then we'll explain, there's a reason. In many cases, we won't tell the doctor. If we really trust him, again, if you don't trust the doctor, then you go for a second opinion. But if you really trust the doctor and you're going for a second opinion because your friends told you and you're not sure and you're worried, you'll kind of hint. But you won't necessarily come and say, I need to make sure that there's another thing happening. So that's already a real negative. That's already coming towards Hashem and saying, not only that I don't have the full bitachon, I'm actively showing that I don't have full bitachon. I'm actively trusting somebody else as well. And that's not bitachon. I'm going to go maybe it's a bit off topic. But I think maybe it's important just to understand the concept. Maybe I should check who's listening before I say, but okay. Just to get this concept, if we have a relationship with Hashem, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem is the mashpia, she's the one giving. And us as a nation, we're the mushpa, we're getting. And we know that the whole world is divided into these two parts of the enjoyment from receiving, enjoyment from giving. And just like, and in general in Chazal, it's called Zachar u'Nekeva, male and female, that the male is more in the giving side and the female is more in the receiving side. And maybe it sounds a bit harsh, but that's because of my English. In Hebrew, it would probably make it sound better. But the concept is that, and we see it in many areas of life. It's also summer and winter is divided that way, relationship between Jews and non-Jews. There's a lot happening there. We know that Chazal tell us, it's brought in the halacha, that a man can never cope with the concept of his wife being married to two men. While a lady, we saw in the olden days, or in Africa, sorry, just got a call, so I had to move it. So I said, we've seen in the olden days and in Africa that women can cope with the concept of two women for one man. And it's a lot to do with the psychology and the concept that Chazal tell us that the receiving and the giving. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us. He's like the male. It can't work for us to be married to Hashem and to somebody else, and to our job and to our position, and to trusting our boss. We need to understand that if we are getting from Hashem, then we're literally getting from Hashem, nowhere else. And we can't be trusting two people. That's the second. The third. The fourth concept, which is a very clear thing, is another measurement to understand that we fully trust Hashem. When you go to a judge, you go to a powerful man, a businessman, a politician, anybody that you want. Mentioned all the honest people in one moment. But anyways, you go to one of these and you want to get a good deal, you need to make an effort to impress them. And it's important for you that they'll have a good opinion on you. I actually work with a lot of people that their challenge is that they don't always read other people's way of thinking. And a couple of weeks ago, I got a phone call at night from a mother that her son went out driving and right after the fast, and he had a l'chaim. I know it's the rule after a fast, you need this, you need that, I don't know what. And he took a little drive, Glen Hazel area, and a policeman stopped him. And because this person doesn't know how to communicate well with people, when the policeman says, you look very shady, you look very weird, give me your license, give me this. Okay, I want to give you a breathalyzer. I want to check your alcohol. And he starts fighting him. And the policeman's getting irritated, and he's getting irritated. And eventually he tells the policeman, why are you even questioning my driving? Do you know how much charity I give to black people? And the policeman lost it. And he said, that's it, I'm arresting you. We actually had his mom actually had to go there, speak to the policeman to explain, listen, he doesn't know how to speak to people. He doesn't understand. He didn't come and say that you're a nebach and he needs to support you guys. And as a mother, you have kids, you understand. But the basic concept is that if you want a favor from somebody, you try to make a good impression. We know we have a good meeting, an important meeting, we dress up properly. We have a date, we dress up. Why? Because we want to make a good impression. Very important. Now, if somebody honestly believes that he has no ability to support himself and everything he has Hashem gives, it won't make sense for him not to try to impress Hashem. And if somebody would say, well, I'm not, I do what I can, me and Hashem, we have a good relationship, not so concerned, whatever, we do, I'm firm in my heart or whatever. I'm not saying that a person has to be perfect in Yiras Shamayim and not do sins and not do that. But there's got to be some kind of attitude and connection with Hashem. That if you realize, honestly, that all your support comes from Hashem, all your finances come from Hashem, your health comes from Hashem, you would take it with a bit more seriousness. There's a reason why when we daven, we have to daven like we're standing in front of a king. One of the Rabbanim here in town, we were learning, and it's an interesting psak. I'm not going to go into who the psak was, that he held that you're not allowed to daven Shmon Esrei. You're not allowed to daven Shmon Esrei with a mask. He says, why? Because it's standard around the world that when you stand in front of a king, you don't wear your COVID mask. If you look, anybody who's talking on TV, I'm sure nobody here in the Shaar knows, but if you would know, nobody wears a mask. So how could you come daven Shmon Esrei and stand in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu with a mask? That's what he paskin. I don't know of any other rabbi who wrote that. I don't know of any rabbi who agrees with that. And I don't know of any rabbi who holds by that. And we wear masks in shul. That's our reality. It's pikuach nefesh, medical reasons, we wear masks in shul. And we also would go to a rav with a mask. And especially in South Africa, that the president will take a picture with the mask or whatever. But to understand what a relationship with Hashem is as soon as we finished learning, it was in the evening, this rabbi tells me, kosher world's still open? I said, I think so. He said, do you know if they sell masks? I said, no. I said, well, what do you need? You're out of masks? He said, no. But after learning this, I decided there's no way I can ever daven Shmon Esrei again with a disposable mask. And that's what I have. So I'm going to buy, and he actually went to a tailor. He spent 150 rands, I think, or something, to get a very nice, important mask, a chosher mask. And he said, and not that he's rich or anything, that he has the ability, but he tells me, we need to understand this concept. If we understand that we're davening and we're standing in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we will probably not stand in front of a king with a disposable mask. And if we understand that everything comes from Hashem, then you got to trust Hashem and you got to impress Hashem. And you got to have this relationship that you are taking him seriously. Because if you're not doing what Ratzon Hashem, then it's not that it changes the bitachon, but it's in a way an indicator that you're not really trusting Hashem. Because somebody that you really trust, that everything you have comes from him, you respect, and you respect and you try to impress. I know, and I'm going to make this disclaimer, that it's not 100%, because will come someone and say, well, our kids, I don't know about your kids, you guys are perfect, but some kids, my kids, sometimes forget that all their parnasa comes, Hashem sends it to the parents. And sometimes they forget that parents are looking after all their needs. And maybe sometimes they don't take in consideration to impress their parents, to say the least. And in a way, sometimes we could have that relationship with Hashem as well, because Hashem's been giving good to us from the day we were born. We've been showered with blessings forever. So a person would say, I'm kind of used to it. So it's not that extreme. I wouldn't say that if somebody wants daven Shmon Esrei with short pants or whatever, but if somebody is in a situation that indicates, just like he won't go to the prime minister that way, then the same thing, because at the end of the day, there is a concept of a relationship with Hashem, and although we need to behave differently, but we get it. However, we do need to remember this concept. And that's what he says, and he brings a pasuk, and he's bringing a lot of pasuk for all of this, but I'm not quoting all of them. But what did he say? He says something very interesting. He said, this pasuk says, Aseh ratzoino kirtzoincha, kedei sheyaseh ratzoincha kirtzoinoi, v'batel ratzoincha mipnei ratzoinoi, kedei sheyivatel ratzoin acherim mipnei ratzoinecha. Which means like this. It's based on the pasuk of Kadesh atzmecha b'mutar lecha. There are many things that you're allowed to do. And if it's not an avera, it's not a problem. But he says, if you want your needs to be looked after properly, even for yourself, then make your wish to be like Hashem. Make your wish to be like what he wants, and cancel your wish for Hashem's wish. What do I mean? A very interesting halacha says that if somebody goes to an inappropriate place, comes the Gemara and says, a place that he shouldn't be, it's not tznius, and the Gemara says, if there's another way to go, then he's considered a posheh, criminal, doing something very wrong. But if there isn't, then he's allowed to go there. So if he goes there and there's another alternative, then it's a crime. If he has to, he could. So what does that mean? That means basically, if we understand what Hashem is telling us, it's like when we're sitting somewhere and we tell our parents, let's take an analogy of your father, and you tell your father, okay, I'm going out somewhere. Your father says, no, you're not. And you say, please. And he says, no. And you say, please, 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 please. And he says, no. And eventually your father will say, fine, do what you want. Obviously, we won't go out because we realize that we can, but it's not okay. It's not as rotzen. So if we are in a situation that we have a relationship with Hashem, that we consistently rely on him for everything, and there's a time that Hashem says, fine, you're allowed to do what you want, that's not how you build a proper relationship. That's not how you could have full bitachon and get everything that you desire. So if you can have the strength to cancel your own desire, then Hashem will fill your own desire for what Hashem wants, for his desire, then Hashem will fill your desire for what you want. And that's a very basic relationship. So regardless of the need to do it because we are slaves of Hashem and we are in the world that Hashem created us, and we could only gain, nothing but gain, in order to make Hashem happy and in order to do the right thing in Yerushalayim. However, by the definition, there's another very important factor. And that extremely important factor is even on a very technical level of achieving something, you always want to be on the good side of the person that's supporting you. And you always want to be on the good side of the person who makes the decisions, especially when it's not a person, when it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's on the positive side, that you definitely want to make a tremendous effort to cancel your rotzon, to cancel your desire in order to get what Hashem, do what Hashem, and then you'll get the full connection. That shows your trust in Hashem. But how bad would it be if it's on the other way around? If somebody actually goes against Hashem, that's already a much stronger extreme. Somebody is in a situation and let's again go back to the analogy. Your boss tells you, go on this business trip and I'll cover full 100% of your expenses. I'll take care of everything. And as long as you don't do ABC, because that will embarrass our firm, and I can't have any of my employees behave that way. And the person says, well, it's my free time. I'm doing what I want. I worked on my journey from 6 to 8. I went to the shul. I went to Beis Medrash. I did my mission. I did my hours. I did my work. Now it's my own free time, and I want to do something that's not appropriate. There's no question that his boss will get upset. And his boss won't take the extra mile for him. So if the boss said, fine, I'll give you everything you need, fine. But he'll say, yeah, I said I'll give you a car, and I found an option of rent-a-wreck. But if a person is actually representing the company properly, then he'll get him a nice car, and he'll get him the nice thing that he needs. And obviously, that once a person is disobeying Hashem, and he's going against Hashem's command, you can't say that he trusts Hashem, because that is complete against logic. You can't say, I trust Hashem gives me everything and I'm in Hashem's hands 100%, but I'm going to do what I want. Then you don't believe that you're under Hashem's hands. You don't believe that you're under his decision. This was once a very interesting discussion between two rabbis. They both passed away many, many years ago. I read it in a book, so I'm not going to say where it was, but it was regarding a certain situation, and it had to involve the Zionist Federation. And at the time, we're talking about before the Israel state started even, there was a lot of conflict. And one of them was going and protesting and fighting the Chilul Shabbos over there and going against. And one day he met the other rabbi, and he tells him, how come you don't protest? So he says, because I don't believe in them like you do. He says, you honestly believe that you go fight these people and they're not going to kill you. That means you have faith in them. I don't have that faith, and I can't go risk my life that way. Which means, I hope this was clear. I said it very vague because I didn't want to touch on the historical facts in that. But the concept is simple. There's a certain thing you do when you trust, and there's a certain thing you do when you don't trust. When a person is here next to his house and he sees somebody who looks suspicious to him, then you trust him, although he looks suspicious, but you trust him that he's not going to come and attack you in your neighborhood. And many times you'll approach him. You'll stand and watch and call CAP, or you'll stand and watch and call some security, or you'll walk up to him and say, everything okay? But if you'd be having the same experience, let's say in the middle of Soweto, the chances of you confronting the suspect are much smaller. You'd probably run. Why? Because you don't have confidence in him there that you won't have danger, which means our reactions and appropriate behavior depends on what we think of the other person. If we're approaching somebody that we're worried about what he can do for our career and for our support, then we approach him in a certain way. If it's somebody we think, what can he do? We'll approach him in a different way. And that's exactly how the approach with Hashem is. So the benefit way, the good way, is definitely to take the extra mile. And that shows Hashem that we're behaving in an appropriate way that you behave to someone who supports you. But it's extreme and it's terrible if somebody says, I don't care. I'm breaking the mitzvahs. I'm breaking the rules. And I'm not talking right now about somebody who does b'shoigeg, or he gets carried away, or it's a one thing and he doesn't aver and he feels bad afterwards and he feels, oh, that was so stupid, I regret it, and he does full tshuva. I'm not talking about that. If somebody says, nah, I'm not interested. Nothing of the averas we live. I mean, we a lot of us sometimes slip, make a mistake, and do something wrong. But it's not because we decide, I'm going to break the Jewish law and I'm going to disobey Hashem. No, I had a taiva, I had a challenge, and I got carried away. And you go and you try to fix it. But if somebody comes and he does something that is disobeying Hashem, especially if he does something extreme in this area. If somebody, for instance, goes against Hashem in a level of stealing, somebody steals, he's definitely saying, I don't trust Hashem, he's going to give me enough. So not only that he's doing an avera, he doesn't, imagine you're sitting in your work's dining room. If we remember years ago before COVID, what that concept was. You're sitting there and the boss says, I'm bringing lunch for everybody. And the boss gives this guy a portion, he gives this guy a portion. And right before he gives you your portion, you steal the guy that's sitting next to you his portion. And the boss says, what are you doing? I said, I'm buying for everybody. He said, yeah, but just to be sure, I really will have. I don't know if you'll really give me or not, so I'm just stealing from my friend. The boss will lose it. He'll get very mad. I just said, I'm taking you all out. So by breaking the rule and being cruel, especially when it's by stealing or by hurting somebody or by swearing for a lie, something that is extreme, then it's offensive, especially something that's shvua, right? That it's in a bezdin, that it's considered a place that Hashem's name is there. So you're coming to your boss's house and you're doing something wrong over there because you don't trust him. That's a tremendous extreme. So the concept of bitachon has to be also in the way we live and also in our actions. We can't feel and behave that we trust Hashem, but not take him seriously as the person we trust, or as the authority we trust, not a person. The Akdama Chamishis, where we do time-wise, just to see, 4 minutes, okay. Okay, the fifth thing is a person has to realize, and we're going to have to next week go into this a bit deeper and a bit clearer, is that anything that happens in this world, after the world was finished to be created, right? Hashem created the world properly. Hashem finished the mission of creation. Then some things, there's going to be two ways of things. Some things that are clear that this is how nature works. Nature works that if you eat, you're not hungry anymore. Maybe not for me, but theoretically, somebody who eats, he's not hungry now. He has what he needs. Nature works that if a person has money, he can buy food. It's one thing. And there are things that will happen in a bit more of distance way. That a person could work very hard in his parnasa, but it won't necessarily work, but he'll get from someplace else, or something that will happen on its own, like we mentioned. And as I said, I've heard it from many rabbis, quoted it, but I've never seen it myself. One day I hope I will. But that There's studies that many times when people they catch fish in the ocean, a big fish, they open the stomach of the big fish, they'll see that the small fish that the big fish ate is with a head towards the tail of the big fish, which means that although the big fish was chasing fish to eat the whole time, he didn't catch, but he actually swallowed a different fish that just swam into his own mouth. Because if he would catch the smaller fish, he could kill himself by tearing the sides of his mouth, because if he would go with the tail first. So I've heard in many places that when you actually get a big fish and you open the fish, you'll find small fish inside that they were swallowed, but they're always swallowed head first. But that's also how we live. Our parnasa is one thing, the work we do is one thing, and the reality of what we get is another thing. But that's a very big topic that we're going to have to touch on next week properly. So I think we are going to end here and just stay with this concept that I think we saw in the 3 different levels today, the idea of if you really trust Hashem, the attitude you would have towards Hashem is an attitude towards an authority person. It's hard to say person, but I'm using it as an example, but it would be towards a person that you want to impress. You want to have a good relationship. You want to be on their good side. You want them to know that you're doing the right thing. That's an indicator. And it's also very silly and doesn't make sense in any level to disobey the source of all your income, the source of anything you're able to get. And if we go with this concept, with this attitude, it will also help us throughout the day to actually feel in every decision, is that what the boss wants? I need to daven mincha now, but I have a good deal, so I could daven b'yechidus, or I could daven not b'yechidus, or I could daven like this, or daven like that, or I'm too tired to put on my shirt, or whatever it is. But is that the attitude you would do towards your supporter? Or you would actually stop what you're doing and take the call properly? If it's your biggest client calling, then you stop what you're doing and you take the call. So if it's Hashem who's giving you all your support, you stop what you're doing and you take the call. And there's no interest to even prioritize your own needs over impressing Hashem that can support all your needs, and over doing the right thing in His eyes, that's the source of everything good we have. I think we'll stop here. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Rabbi, I've heard from a dietitian